Hello, this is Kyra Magna, and this is Newage H55 HUGHES, or their take on G1 Powerglide. This is the latest minibot release from Newage, and it's obviously the initial tune deco. We'll take a look at the figure, but first, we'll take a look at the box. It's a standard cardboard package with a clamshell inside. It's based on the initial G1 toy box art. As you can see, the red gradients and whatnot, and of course the art itself is all reminiscent, but in a modernized take for a non-card backed box as well. There's some product shots on the side. And on the back there's a very cute product shot of Powerglide and Astoria. She is not included in this set, unfortunately. I do believe that's the DX9 one being photographed. We got company logos, we got warnings, it's the works, it's a box, alright. You also get an instruction manual for the figure. I did get stuck transforming this guy once or twice and had to look it up online, so maybe they could have done a better job, but you do get this. You do get an interesting assortment of accessories with the figure as well, including a plastic display stand. Newage logo is printed on the bottom of it, and it has an arm which is identical to the secret arm coming out from the base. It can be removed, and it will move forward on this hinge, all the way back and forth. The second hinge will also move all the way out. And the adapter on the end is a new piece, and it looks like it's cast in a slightly different clear plastic from the rest of the base. But the port here will plug into the figure. It will plug into the port on the figure's back, like so. You get Powerglide's standard blaster from the cartoon. It's similar in sculpt to Bumblebee or Ironhide's, but with a few more greebles on it. I do like the sculpt. It is an unpainted piece of gray plastic and can fit into the figure's port in his fist easily, like so. And you get the mask that Powerglide wears in Hoist Goes to Hollywood. It's fully painted with some well-painted eyes as well, which can often get screwed up. I like the sculpt as well. It's suitably goofy to match the episode, which has to first be applied by flipping this panel up used for transformation, as well as rotating the face 180 degrees and pushing it back down, revealing a port on him, which you can then take the peg on the back of the accessory and plug it in like so. For a very, very goofy and fun result, I think it is very successful in what it's trying to do. And here is the figure. The first thing that immediately struck me when I opened his box was that gorgeous coat of red paint he's coated in head to toe. It glows beautifully under any light, and even unlit can look like quite a nice surface. It gives that metallic sheen to the figure, which I very much appreciate. I can't zoom in any further than this, but from the top down, we have some sculpted detail coming out from the top of his head. And then we have some gray accents painted here. Mine has a slight mispainting of a couple drops spilled. You can't really see it on camera, but it is there, I assure you. As you come down, you will see the white faceplate, which is fully painted with painted blue eyes in that metallic that reflects the light so gorgeously. Huge fan, well done. And then you get a fully painted gray visor as well. I'm going to stop saying fully painted, as there is almost nothing on this figure that isn't painted, so I will just point out when things are not painted. Coming down to the chest, of course, you have a couple lines, panel lines that is, matching the cartoon, as it should. Looks great, with a cool curvature to it as well. The arms are sculpted interestingly, I will say, as you sort of come around to the side here as well. You have the circle connecting to the forearm, and then the shape here interpreted the G1 line work as actually an outdent for the entire shape, which I actually think looks amazing as sort of a subtle integration of that line work as something more interesting than just indented panel lines. As you come down to the crotch of the figure, you'll notice some sculpt breakup from the engineering between the top half of the figure and the bottom due to the hip engineering and how the ab crunch is as well. You will then see a blue accent in his pelvis area with a yellow accent on top of that. I think the blue should be a little brighter, to be honest with you, but I don't mind how this looks either. I think it works. Coming down to the thighs as well, the gray is painted, as well as on the inside, actually, the red is painted in there, which we will see in use for transformation later. But it is not the worst spot to put extra paint if you did need to hide extra red panels, so I'll give it to them Funnily enough, it is reflective of the DX9 Powerglide's transformation scheme in that aspect, which is said to be by the same designers, or sort of designers that are related. Anyhow, moving down to the legs, we have a mess of panel breakups. They fit the shape of the G1 Cartoons model, but they are just coated in hinges everywhere. It's kind of ugly, but I also don't hate it. So of course you have these thruster pieces on the side broken up. They look okay. Then you have a panel line lined in the middle of this hinged section, which comes into an unpainted hinge here on the inside, coming down to another hinge for the ankle. And then there's just hinges, panels. It's in the shape, but it's broken up such a way that I think it could have been done cleaner, but I don't hate how it is done. I think the flat red coat really helps out the figure. Moving along to the side here, of course, we already talked about the arms, of course, but on the legs, you notice more of the panel breakup. And you also notice this silver sliding joint popping out, which I'm not a fan of, but it is also not a terrible breakup, to be honest, with red on red on red. I think it's just sliding joints as a whole look kind of ugly. Coming around to the back here, of course, we're going to go from the top down again. We have clear plastic windshield, which actually looks quite amazing. A tune-accurate back with the panel lines that match, which is impressive on a figure with such a complex transformation for a minibot, of course, to have a tune-accurate back. And then there is an unpainted hinge in there as well. That is so it doesn't chip, for the record, so I don't mind it at all. Going around to the butt here, I guess, we got a port coming out for the flight stand, which we talked about earlier. We have what appears to be some die-cast metal and then some screws. Of course, the best place to hide both those things. Works well for the weight of the figure. And then here we actually have some gappiness coming from all that panel breakup. You're starting to see the woes of what comes with that. And some heel spurs, which help stability. And coming back up just a little bit, there are some hinges breaking up the arms. It all looks fine. It's passable. It's a little kibbly, but to be honest, I think the flat colors of the figure just hide a lot of the problems on it. There's also a breakup sort of hole right here, which I'm not super big fan of, but it is a minibot. I need to sort of give this figure some credit of being a legend scale minibot, which is quite a hard thing to be if you ask me. So I'm not going to be too hateful on this figure going forward. Before we talk about articulation, we're going to talk about some gimmicks. So he just has the one gimmick, which is, of course, the opening chest on a hinge, like so, from the girl who loved Powerglide. And as you can see, he has quite a loving little heart in there. It's not painted to match the cartoon because there's not enough room to do something nice in there, but it's super cute touch. The heart could be a little more heart-shaped, but I'm not going to complain. I actually saw this reveal image where it showed off the heart, and that's what actually caused me to pre-order this figure. So I'm glad I have my copy, and the heart is nothing to scoff at. Moving on to articulation, coming from the head down. I'm going to move these out of the way so we have more room to work with. You can rotate the head 360 degrees, like so, and I think that works well. Coming down to the arms here, the shoulder is on a hinge, and will go up about 90 degrees. And the bicep will also swivel 360. Coming down, of course, you get an elbow joint, which will actually get you notably past 90 degrees. Impressive. For the lack of sculpt break, that is. And then as you come to the wrist here, I'm going to note you have to hold these two panels on the forearm together while you rotate the hand. It's a little hard to see, but you can get it about that far, so, 180. More than enough if you ask me. Coming down here, you have a waist swivel, which will get you a full 360. From there, you have an ab crunch, which gets you, just a few degrees, to be honest with you. I think that this could have been executed a little bit better because it is kind of an ugly ab crunch, too, if you look at the back here. It is on a hinge, which ends up hitting the end on the top of the backpack, I do believe. Plus, the chest sort of doesn't really want to go all the way forward there. It's passable as an ab crunch. It's better than nothing. Could have been a little better, but I'm not going to complain too hard about it. I think that it works for the figure. Coming down to the legs here, you get 90 degrees out to the side on both sides, obviously. You get a swivel at the thigh that will get you 360 degrees. The leg will move at the pelvis, sort of crotch area, very, very high. So if you move the ab crunch out of the way, you will get about this much, which, you know, way past 90 degrees. Very impressive, no complaints. And you'll also get the same backwards motion just a little bit. It might just be tight on my copy. I'm not going to force it because you don't need backwards motion on a figure. Don't at me. I've kind of destroyed the kibble on the leg, as you can see, as I've manipulated it. This figure does have that problem. We're going to just go to the other leg, though. The knee will bend 90 degrees. This might be my biggest criticism of the figure. Every flying character, specifically with a flight stand where you want to do flying poses in bot mode, needs 180-degree knees, because if you want them to kick their legs up for that sort of classic superhero flying pose, that needs to go past 90 degrees. Super unhappy with the 90-degree knee. I don't know if they could have done anything better because there's not much room to work with when you sort of look at the engineering all around it. It's just disappointing either way. I would have taken a hit to the bot mode, or hit to the alt mode rather, and sacrificed it to make sure I get that 90-degree knee bend because it's so important to the figure. And as we come down to the foot will actually swivel all the way around. I don't know why you would need that particularly, but it can do that. The ankle will move out 90 degrees. And you even get toe tilt, which gets you down a decent amount. So I'm actually impressed with that. Toe tilt is nice. And the heel spur here can actually move down a bit, which you can actually kind of use in combination with toe tilt to get some like walking poses and stuff for extra support. So I find that pretty useful. That about does it for the articulation, though. I find it a pretty well-articulated figure overall. The knees is the only sort of unforgivable lack of articulation that I can think of on it, and it should be worth noting when you think about this figure. For some size comparisons, here he is with Magic Square's Optimus Prime 2.0. Here he is with Magic Square's Prowl. Here he is with Newage's RC. Here he is with Newage's Bumblebee 2.0 for another minibot comparison. And for a Hasbro, here is the Studio Series Rise of the Beasts RC. And moving on to transformation, we're going to start at the top of the body, as you do with just about any Powerglide. You sort of flip the face around, fold the wings out, fold the arms into the wings. Powerglide hasn't changed much in that top half, you know, in the past 30, 40 years. But when you sort of start to move down to the legs is when things heat up. You end up having to go through a bunch of panels, so you have to like fold out 4 wings from the feet, or 4 panels from the feet, and then suddenly you have to twist at the thigh, and then the knee, and then the ankle, and then the torso to get everything aligned correctly. It's a lot. It's not a frustrating experience, but it is a complicated one, and I think that should be noted as well. When you sort of start to finish positioning everything as well, like the wings and the sort of thrusters and the back wings as well, everything is on like ball joints or like pinned joints that don't click anywhere which way, so you have to like manually align them, which makes it a little fiddly. The transformation is kind of fun overall though, so I'll give it some props. Let's take a look. And here is the alt mode. The red paint immediately spoke to me once again in a new light looking at this. I really appreciate it over the curvature of the plane model. This is of course a chibified version of a real life plane, so it is quite cartoony, as Newage does like to aim for those cartoon alt modes. And coming in from the top down, we have transparent plastic for the windshield, which looks quite nice, or I suppose the cockpit. And then there's a bunch of sculpted detail across here, whether it's from intentional sculpting, such as this back piece, or if it's from hinges, such as the entire bottom of the plane. There's a lot. There's some nice sculpting on the insides of the wings here, but there are also some ugly little, I don't know what to call them, pins, I suppose. They're just big pins, yeah. Coming down, of course, again, you have some thrusters, which do have black painted accents inside them, and I think they look quite nice. You have the crotch detailing up here, which is G1 inaccurate to the show model, but it's forgivable, to be honest with you. I think that might be why they didn't go with the brighter blue, actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, is because it would have been more egregious to look at in this mode. And as we come around here, there is, of course, the arms folded up. Visible fists, I don't like it. They should have, I mean, it's just so impossible to compress them any smaller at this scale. I can't even blame them. I do believe I forgot a transformation step now that I'm here, though. I should have pulled out this chest piece and folded it all the way down and around like so. That does complete it. Makes the nose a little cleaner. Sorry about that. And of course, the bottom section is quite clean as well. You do have the thighs sticking out here, which are a little ugly, to be honest. Moving around to the side, though, of course, once we move these turbines out of the way, you'll notice that the thighs are actually underpainted versus overpainted. This is so that the red doesn't show up in bot mode as on the front view, but they do show up the gray in this mode, so there is give and take there, and I think that was the correct option they picked, but I am going to take it as a negative against the alt mode here. Otherwise, I actually find this quite a nice cleanup. I don't think I've ever really seen such a nice looking toon version of the alt mode. I do think the arms should have been cleaned up a little more. I do think that everything should stop being so fiddly, to be honest. It could have been worse. The transformation to get here was at least fun, so it wasn't a hellish transformation for something that is unimpressive. I do quite like the alt mode in its entirety, even if it does require cleanup. And of course, from earlier, if you have your display stand that he came with, the port on here will plug into the same port that we used on bot mode. And he can fly to his heart's content, and I think it works quite well. Speaking of accessories, a bonus feature that you may be able to discover is that the fists here, I don't know if they work better on another rotation, but the fists can in fact tab the blaster in a little bit if you need to fake it for a photo or something for some weapon storage, but it is very loose. I appreciate it either way. I don't know if it was intended. I do believe I saw it in someone's photo. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the alt mode. It cleans up well, the paint looks gorgeous, but it does have some notable sculpt flaws due to the engineering. Give and take, as with all Transformers. For the record, there is also no landing gear, which Powerglide does use landing gear in the cartoon. I am not mad about this. The landing gear would have broken anything up even more, and I would have very much been displeased with what it did to the robot mode. So I appreciate Newage going out of their way to not include landing gear. I suppose I shouldn't be giving them a pat on the back for that, but I appreciate it nonetheless. For a size comparison, here it is with the Magic Square Seeker alt mode. So he's a little guy, and because I have it on the desk, here he is with a Newage Constructicon. Once again, still smaller. Final thoughts-wise, I'm going to look at the negatives first. So, of course, off the bat, there is breakup in both modes, whether it be the alt mode gray thighs shining through or that kibble covering the legs in the bot mode. It is there and it should be noted. Of course, as well, the 90-degree knees are kind of an affront to the entire figure as it inhibits what is otherwise quite an articulated figure from reaching those interesting flying poses you'd want to do on your flight stand. The lack of landing gear should be noted as well, even if I did justify it. But it is something that could have been included for any flyer, and it is not. The price point of this figure should actually be noted. It was about $40 or $41 on Shozi, which is where I purchased this figure. And I do think that that price was a little high for what you actually get. The figure is just below Newage Carbot size, which is kind of where their tall mini-bots land. So I do understand why it might be that price, but I do believe it should have been a $35 figure. I think the flight stand was added to sort of push that price point up and maybe offset that shipping cost. I wasn't happy with it. I think 35 would have been a nice price point. At least give me an Astoria and I probably would have gone, oh, okay, you know. Positives wise though, I actually think there is a lot to talk about there. The sculpt is of course drop dead gorgeous, nailing that G1 characterization from head to toe. The paint is as well. That red paint, Newage just cannot miss on there. David and Ironhide have proved this in the past, and as has this release here. It looks great in all modes, especially complemented in alt mode by that transparent window or by the gray breakups in bot mode. And the accessories he does have do work as well. I think the Host Goes to Hollywood mask looks great and very goofy. The gun is interesting while still remaining that G1 accurate sculpt. And the flight stand is functional for what it is, and I actually do like it as a accessory in a vacuum. The transformation is actually quite fun as well. It's interesting without being frustrating. It's panelly without being over-involved. I think that it should be commended in a lot of ways. The articulation is otherwise amazing. Ab crunches, thigh swivels, ankle tilts, toe tilts, everything you could ask for is on this figure except for those knees, so it makes them stand out like a sore thumb. The lack of arm breakup as well, where you plug in like ball joints and whatnot, which he doesn't really use, also came out really impressive. So I do think Newage just needs to be commended a lot for this release, even if I do have some notable qualms with it. I think you should pick up this figure if you like Powerglide and you like Legend scale figures. I do think you can wait for a sale to see if it will eventually at some point if you are not fully sold on it though, as there are some negatives to note. Otherwise, I have been Kyrie Magna. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. See ya.